I hope changing the name in YouTube didn't mess it all up.
It shouldn't. Nearly everybody at the grocery store was buying like these huge bags of crab legs, and I'm like, they are about to get it in on this Memorial Day weekend. It's funny to me.
Okay, we are live. I know I have 2 lobster tails in there left because this is going to be a bunch of, they are big, girl. They look like behemoth lobster tails. I don't know what's going on with those things, but.
Well, I made a seafood steam pot today.
That sounds good.
It was really good. I love seafood.
So I have questions for you because a couple years back, it might have been 2-3 years now, I interviewed you.
Mm-hmm.
And people had a hard time with that message, not because you said anything harsh, but because you actually expressed a great love for Black men and a great frustration for their positioning in society and their unwillingness to push back when they have the strength to do so. And I just felt that was such a powerful message and something that I think is greatly overlooked in a lot of what you say. But lately here, you've been coming with a different message. And so what I'm hearing, number one, is you want Black women to recognize that the way we interact with Black men has to change because we are enabling them to be at their worst. And we're also internalizing things that have nothing to do with us because their behavior is consistent, whether we're a part of the equation or not. But that brings me to the question, because you say so often there are individual Black men and you can get behind an individual Black man, but as a collective, you just aren't seeing it. Where are you now? Have you moved from that initial conversation we had where it was just that initial frustration with them allowing themselves to be in this position and not pushing back? And have you gone somewhere else? Are you still there and this is just a build off that? Explain to me, like, what is the overall message? Because that's why I titled this "Are Black Men a Lost Cause?"
Oh, whether was I? Oh, I was unmuted when I coughed. Oh, how uncouth and barbaric of me.
I can't.
So, obviously I learned a lot, especially since that interview. And that first discussion we had was very eye-opening because I saw how it doesn't really matter what you say about Black men. You can say a lot of things favorable about them, you can insult them, but even if you're talking favorably about them and you talk about accountability or leadership or position that they should be in, you're going to get the same response. So it just showed me that Black men as a collective group, and the reason I say individually, because you do have, some of them, a small amount of them who, they want progression, they want change, but the vast majority of them don't. And so I think that at this point, Black women should cut their losses, understand who Black men are, and act accordingly, because we're not going to get them to see what we see. We're not going to get them to understand what we're trying to show them. And they're comfortable. They're very, very comfortable.
Who are they, though?
Most Black men.
No, I'm saying, who are they? You said you're encouraging Black women to see Black men for who they are. And then my question is, who are they then?
A conquered group of men who have clearly, if you study history, have had some deep spiritual and psychological flaws. And, I don't know the exact origins of it, but one of the things, and this really bothered me, because I had to go through a psychological process to get here, because, when I first came to YouTube, I was, very much a Black male worshiper. People didn't see it, but I was heavily into Black male worship. Their problems were at the forefront. And then I saw how comfortable they were. And then I saw how complicit they were. And then, I went over this process to do some history and educate myself, because it's like, okay, I don't want to be saying all these things about Black men and then I find out it's not true. So I did some research, and I did this research heavily when I was putting together my mini documentary, which Sorry for the people who wanted to see it, but I think I actually deleted it off my computer. So I have to see if there's a channel that I have it on and try to premiere it. But I learned how complicit they were. I learned where there were white supremacists doing pillaging and destruction of our community. There were Black men facilitating and helping and aiding. And so once I started realizing that, I said, okay, so this is just who Black men are, where there's something spiritually bankrupt, morally bankrupt. And I do believe that morality is subjective, but based on my perspective, they are morally bankrupt. And I think that there's something really wrong with them to even be comfortable in this position, but they are comfortable. There is something wrong with Black men. I think that Black women are very spiritual and Black men are spiritually disconnected. They simply just, they just don't see it the way that we see it. And this is where I say, I believe to a degree in some of the things in the Bible. I do believe that at a certain point, people will be allowed to be handed over to their desires so that their desires can consume them. And I do believe heavily in the notion of having a reprobate mind and people's hearts and ears being closed off to the truth. And I think that's where we're at with Black men. And I think that the more Black women support them, the more we're patient, the more we convince ourselves that there is some hope in them, despite the fact that they're showing us by and large that there is none. I think that we're doing a disservice to ourselves. I think we need to cut the umbilical cord and let Black men fend for themselves without our support. They're ungrateful, they're childish, they're immature. They have this toxic, narcissistic, entitled pathology. And I just think we need to stop dealing with it and stop perpetuating it. And that's what we're doing.
Can I ask you? So I want to go to the complacency. I want to say I agree with you on the complacent. I think as a whole, Black men are complacent and comfortable where they are in society. And this comes to me by the word of Black men. I've actually had Black men say this to me. And it was hard for me to swallow. But if it's coming out of their mouth to me and we're not in a combative sort of situation with each other, we're just having a genuine conversation, then I'm inclined to believe that, even if it makes me uncomfortable. But when you say, cut the umbilical cord, when you say, withdrawing our support, do you think that that's realistic when Black women create Black men? Like, we carry them in our wombs, we give birth to them. Do you really foresee Black women stepping back from essentially their own creation?
I don't see them doing it, but I do think it's realistic, because if we look at Black men have already detached and separated themselves from Black women, despite the fact that they helped to create us too. Like, the way that we're created is with their sperm. Now, we know that technology has advanced to the degree that we don't necessarily need it now, but that's primarily how we're being created, is with the help of Black men. Yet, for example, with the Breonna Taylor situation, I have yet to hear one Black man say, well, that could be my daughter. That could have been my sister. That could have been my cousin. That could have been my aunt. I never hear Black men saying that. What I hear them saying is, well, that's a random Black woman. I'm not protecting a random woman that I don't know. I'm not doing that. But Black women, when they saw George Floyd was their brother. George Floyd was their son. That was their uncle. That was their cousin. So there's a disconnect where Black men simply don't see Black women through the same lenses that Black women see Black men.
In what ways are you suggesting Black women pull back?
And then we need to just completely stop, is what I'm saying. Stop advocating for them, unless you see that it's a person who strongly advocates for Black women and who obviously have Black women's best interest at heart. We just need to pull back on everything. I'm at the point to where I think we honestly, and I never thought I would say this, and it's still kind of bothersome to my psyche, but I'm at the point to where I even think that it might be productive to stop giving birth to them for a little while, just to show them what we can actually do. I think we need to do something drastic. If we really want to get their attention, we're going to have to do something drastic.
So our population of Black men is so low already. I don't know if I can say I wouldn't want to see them, you know, born for a period of time, because I think we run the risk of like affecting our population that's already on the decline, at least in the Western world. But I do want to get to what you were saying about like something drastic needs to happen because something needs to change. I actually really agree with that. I do think there is a lack of desire of Black men as a collective to push back against the system in any way that's advantageous to them as a collective, and by extension of that to us as a collective. And so can we talk a little bit about when Black women, you say we engage in Black male worship. Essentially, we love them to a point of idolatry. What are we enabling them? What behaviors in them are we enabling that ultimately are leading to our own demise, that causes you to tell us like to fall back in certain areas? What in them are we cultivating through our behavior that hurts them and is damaging us?
Sorry, I had to throw something in the garbage. So, you know, I like your child analogy when you use it. And obviously I don't know a lot about rearing children beyond watching, you know, my siblings do it and looking at what my mom has done. And I've noticed, like with any behavior, it's not just with children, is with adults, but if there are no consequences for behaviors, you might as well be reinforcing the negative behaviors. Because here's the thing, we run around and we say we're the most unprotected and disrespected group, but we give out our protection of Black men without getting it in return. And this is why I say this is a Black male worshiping culture. Black women understand why the community is the way that it is when it comes to the violence, when it comes to the crime, when it comes to the inappropriate touching. We know that these things are done by Black men, obviously, because women are not going around doing these things. Even if you look at gangs, females who are in gangs, they're in extensions of male gangs. So usually when women are motivated to violence, is generally at the behest of a man, because we have more of a nurturing pathology. So we recognize that the community is the way that it is, and we know that it's because Black men, we know that they haven't built, we know that we're subjugated because they're subjugated, we know that it's us out there advocating for change, and we know that they are not. Yet we treat them like they are. The way that we regard Black men is as if they're doing things to benefit the community, and they're not. And I think that that's how you cultivate a toxic narcissistic pathology in someone, where they don't have to bring anything to the table. They simply have to be who they are. And this is what we accept. We accept the lack of protection. We accept the disrespect, because what we'll do is we'll just put out disclaimers and say it's not all Black men. That's what we'll do. Like I had somebody in my comments now saying, oh, well, her experience isn't with all Black men. It's just her own experience. So we tend to even take on the mindset of Black men, knowing it's not beneficial to us. Like, how many women do you have running around now shaming single mothers, saying it's the woman's responsibility to keep a man in the home, knowing you can't keep a man in the home? So we literally facilitate these mentalities. We facilitate them. That's why I don't understand how they run. I understand it, but the whole notion that Black women don't submit to Black men is just ludicrous, because we submit to them in mindset. We follow the culture that they put out. We even look at other women, like our other Black female counterparts. We look at them the way that Black men do. And so when we do that, we're literally facilitating everything, all of the bad negative behavior. They never have to be accountable for anything. Now, they can use child support and say that because they have to pay child support, they're accountable, but they don't. There's nothing that Black men have to be accountable for. They don't even have to be accountable for their dating decisions. Like I did a live stream earlier about that man who went with that Skeletor Miss Crypt Keeper, and someone in the comments was like, "Oh, she scammed him." So he doesn't even have to be accountable for his own dating choices and who he chooses to be with. There is no accountability. Black men don't take any accountability. They are the most protected in our community, even above children. And it's a problem. And I don't know how we think that this is healthy. How is it productive? How is it beneficial? No. Now you have a bunch of wild, uncouth, detached, unemotional, unempathetic sociopaths running around in our community saying that they're prizes.
I definitely think you bring up a good point when you say that Black men are protected even above children, because definitely there are many homes, right, that are led by women where a man will come in and be physically or sexually abusive to the children in the home, and that the onus of that abuse is then transferred to the child. That girl was being fast or the boy was being combative or things like that, which is weird in and of itself. You know, somebody in the comment section was saying these Black boys are being raised by Black moms, which is problematic, right? It's not a credit to the father for us to be able to make that statement. But even then, we recognize that that extension that Sin is talking about, and that's why I really wanted to have this conversation with her, is because we do have to be honest in a regard, right? And to me, it comes to this. When we as women, we have wombs, and creation of a child is a very different thing for us than it is for a man, because we have a human being living in our bodies, right? And even women who are have not given birth, it's a natural innate thing to have sympathy and love, right, for other people. Women are known for that, for being empathetic, for being nurturers. Not, we're all not that way, but most of us have that in us. And it is very hard to detach. I think Mika was saying this. It's very hard, especially for women who have given birth, to not sympathize when we see a person, be there a man, woman, or child being harmed. We sympathize and we want to protect. But it's sort of like, I think this is what you're saying, Sin, it's sort of like having a spoiled child. It may pain you, I know for me as a mother, it does sometimes, to take privileges or punish or come, you know, even sometimes for a lot of parents, it can be hard to just accept that your child is even doing something wrong. Have you guys ever met that parent where if you tell them their child did something bad, they just refuse to believe it? They've got all the excuses. Those children don't grow up to be functional adults. And I think in our relationship as men and as women, and I want the men to be open to this, because when I say to the men, you should not give your attention to women who are below standard, the men understand that. I think it's problematic when that message is understood, but the adverse message is not understood, which is that by providing all the benefits of respect, of love, of protection, of compassion, dare I say that, to people who are not fully standing in their manhood, all you do is further, you aid in further diminishing it. Somebody in the comment section said Black women are being used against Black men. I would agree, but we're being used to diminish their manhood. And so the thing is that we pull back from the support of diminished manhood, because by us not pulling back away from diminished manhood in Black men, what we support is making them more effeminate, more subjugated, more subdued. And it's, in my opinion, an act of love, even though I think sometimes it's a hard pill to swallow if it's not delivered in the sweetest of ways. Is that kind of what you're saying to Black women, is that ultimately we're going to get what we deserve if we keep rewarding this subjugated, counterproductive, self-hating, self-destructive, community crushing sort of personality type, if we keep rewarding it with our support, our love, our reproductive access, our protection, all of those things that ultimately we're going to cause our own demise.
Well, we are. It's just that simple. And we can look at what's happening now with the influx of Black men who have very entitled mentalities because, again, they're the prize. So therefore, a woman doesn't have the right to reject a man because he's the prize. So we already see it playing out. But here's the thing. I don't agree that Black women are being used against Black men. And I actually think that's an example of how Black men get exempt for their behaviors. This isn't an issue. First of all, it's on Black men to ensure that nobody is using their group of women against them, because there isn't, listen, white women are being used against Black men to the aid of white men. Black men can't just go into the white community and use a white woman against a white man, because they have their situation tightened up. They've already incentivized their women. So there isn't anything that a Black man can provide a white woman except dick. That's the only thing he can provide her. And it's like, even when he's doing that, she still has loyalty to white men. So even if Black women, even if I do entertain that and say, okay, cool, well, Black women are being used against white men, I don't think anybody has really painted an example of it. But even if that is the case, it's on Black men to prevent that from happening. That's not on Black women. That's what happens when you allow yourself to become a conquered group of men. So you thought you were going to be conquered and dominated, and nobody was going to have more control over your female group than you do, with the women knowing that you can't get her from under the dominance of white men. You can't do that. You can't even stop yourself. So what do you mean? Even if they are, of course they're using them against you. Now, I don't think that they are, but even if they were, duh, like, what do you think is going to happen? But I think that just strips Black men from their accountability. If you don't want other groups of men using your women against you, then it's on you to stop it. And anybody who sits up here and actually, if we go with that and use that as an excuse, then what accountability does that place on Black men for allowing himself and his female group to be dominated by another male group? What accountability does he have to take for that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely can see the argument. I definitely can see the argument for that. I think I think to me, Black men are not a lost cause, because even in saying that we're going to change how we interact with them, that we don't even want to be in a position to enable this behavior. Somebody in the chat was saying they know they're going to get beat. I agree. And lots of Black men have said to me, like, with modern technology and weapons, like, we could never actually defeat anybody. And that's part of their basis. I definitely don't want to support that kind of thinking, right? I don't want to support a defeatist attitude. It's the worst possible attitude in my eyes a man could ever have, is a completely defeatist attitude. Like, there's no way I could ever win. There's nothing I can do. So I will just make the best out of a bad situation, and think that because we're not literally being strung up to trees by the hundreds or thousands, because we're not literally in chains, just in mass, although honestly, a lot of Black men are literally in chains and cages, that that's somehow an improvement that we're willing to live with. I think if we keep promoting comparing everything to the lowest common denominator, then, that is problematic. And I think even acknowledging that and saying, we don't want to do that anymore. We don't want them to feel like they're walking in the fullness of their manhood when they literally are not. I think that in and of itself proves they're not a lost cause. Even our acknowledgement of that and wanting to adjust. Hey, Nylah, what are your thoughts?
Hey, ladies. I'm in total agreement. I just literally had someone say that to today, that Black women are the right hand of white supremacy, and my answer was literally what Cynthia just said. If we are, which I do not believe that we are, it's your fault. You allowed it. You allowed it. It's more a show of your lack of leadership if women are doing that. because it could never happen in the reverse. It could never happen in reverse. And also, to your point, the whole thing is, and I try to reiterate this today, Black women have always been empathetic to the condition that Black people and Black men have been in. The problem is, Black women, we have been taught to ignore our own condition and feel sorry for their condition as men. And that would be fine for us to empathize with them if it was being reciprocated, but it is not. These men are basically expecting us to pretend like they're acting at full capacity or even comparable to other cultures while we're having to deal with less and having less to work with. They're trying to basically get us to lie to them, and lying to them and telling them that they're doing a good job, that they are building, that they are doing this when they're not, is worse than grading on the curve.
Kenneth L said something.
Well, can I add to this really quickly, because it's about to slip my mind. So here's the thing. If Black men feel as though they could never win against white men, then what makes them think that Black women can then? Because they sure will sit up and talk about what are Black women going to do to get out of systemic oppression? What are Black women going to do to save the community? If you know that you can't defeat the people who are dominating you, then what makes you think your women can? And then if they know that, and that's why I'm talking about their sociopathic mentality, because then if you know that, we should never hear, oh, Black women are the right hand of white supremacy, because you should know she doesn't have a choice in it. You already said you don't have a choice in it. You can't do anything. You're disempowered and you are men. So you think that these women are more equipped than you to fight back against the dominance of another male group?
Which is why they fight against us, which is why it's their fight is feminism, which is why we hear these conversations and they say feminism is the problem. Anything but standing up to their gender equal and their societal equal. They view us as, I really believe that they resent their positions because of us. I feel like they should have been protected by their mothers or there is something twisted and wrong with the mindset of the collective, because they would rather fight the war on women, weave, and children than on for their own liberation, for their own rights.
Yeah. And I also think, in addition to that, I don't think many Black men, and Kenneth L., I'm going to use your comment as an example, really know how to even conceive reality from a place of power. Kenneth said, you guys date losers. That's your problem. Black women date Pookie and Tyrone and knowingly ignore Melvin. Kenneth, this is what I'm talking about.
This is exactly what I'm talking about.
I think you don't know how to think from a place of power. If you think sexual choice is the basis for this conversation, then you have a very small mind. Nylah Sin mentioned building. Nylah was talking about engaging other male groups in a race for power. And I want to just throw this out there. When we talk about race, Black people think race collectively is about skin color. Mm-hmm. Race is about the competition for power, for resources, for domination and control. And we are categorized by our phenotype, which is where skin color comes in. I think a lot of Black men, you're thinking about sex, and that's a slavish mentality, right? Sex, reproduction, sex. Who are you going to have sex with? But the mentality of those who are actually competing is about acquisition of resources, is about acquisition of power, is about crushing the competition. And I think a lot of Black men, and this is very frustrating, you guys have to understand, those of you who think like this, Black men who don't think like this, you understand where I'm coming from. Mm-hmm. It is frustrating for women to watch such base thinking when we understand the competition is not about vagina. The competition is about you acquiring land and resources, control over water, over mines, over land, control over military systems. And that has nothing to do with us. which goes back to what Nylah was saying, which is your focus is in the wrong place. You're thinking sex. This is bigger than vagina, if you can imagine it.
Yep. And it's really, to be honest, it's really embarrassing. It's embarrassing to see men constantly ask women for solutions. There's so many men that are asking women for solutions, and it's the same answer from healthy-minded women. You figure out something, plan something, execute something, and the women will show up. And I don't understand how come that's not instinctual for these men. And if we do come up with solutions, then they will call us masculine.
But here's my question, though, because this is, it's, again, they're going to prove me right because they are who they are. And that's why I say Black women need to understand who they are. And they're showing you who they are by literally the same talking points that alleviates them from any accountability. And you're never, look, if a person keeps denying that there's any fault, they're not going to change. It just is what it is. Because what is Melvin doing about Pookie? If Melvin knows that Pookie is a problem in the community, why isn't he doing anything about Pookie?
Right. Right.
I think
instead of telling the women, if you feel like the women should not be, it's your job. It is your job to defend the community wholeheartedly. If you feel like there's a group of men, even if he is of your own kind, and he is threatening your society, you're supposed to eliminate him. That's what you're supposed to do. Kenneth L says, how are you supposed to gain wealth if you cannot get hired? How are you supposed to gain the respect of women if you cannot figure that out?
Okay, first of all, this is what I mean about the thinking from a place of weakness. First of all, you're talking about how do you gain wealth without getting hired? Wealth is something that is created. It's not something you gain. It is something that is created, and it's created by acquisition of resources and power. You don't have to worry about getting hired, right? If you own the systems and the resources that provide the jobs. And this is what is frustrating in these conversations. I'm sure that was a genuine question, but it's frustrating because you're always thinking from a place of servitude. And so our conversations digress to a place of servitude and not a place of power. Right. And that is very frustrating. It's frustrating to have these conversations. And then you guys, many of you, right? A lot of you understand where I'm coming from as, as men, because this is how you think, but many of you, and overwhelmingly the majority of men in our community, do think from a place of weakness. How do I get a job? How do I get hired? Not how do I acquire resources? Not how do I compete, right, for power, but how do I go and grovel low enough to be given privileges by those who have resources and power? And that is problematic. It's a frustrating position to be in when we're attached to you in this race, right? For dominance and competition on a global scale. And that is where a lot of this frustration is coming from. I don't understand why that's so difficult to understand.
And if you know that you can't even get resources out of Melvin, because I'm going to assume that this dude, he probably put himself in the category of the Melvin, which he's really just repackaging Educated Lames and Pookie and Ray Ray. So if you know that you can't even get resources, why are you complaining about who Black women select? Because when it comes to a situation where we're talking about resources and subjugation, you in the same category as Pookie and Ray Ray. Now you can sit there and try to gaslight and act like you're better, but you're no better. You said you can't even get a job. What Pookie will do, Pookie will go get money regardless to how he got to get it. He'll get it how he got to live. He probably ain't sitting around asking how is he going to get wealth. He's probably engaging in some illegal means so he can get some wealth.
And arguably, they're considered the most dangerous by the status quo. So depending on what you're looking at, right? They're not always looking to arrest Melvin, right? As the brother put it. They're looking to arrest Pookie and Ray Ray because Pookie and Ray Ray are more willing to get into a shootout with them in the street, right? Yeah. Pookie and Ray Ray are more likely to buck against the system. And so while I would never encourage violence within our communities by a long shot, what I would encourage is that mindset to be comfortable pushing back against the status quo. That can be done whether you're educated or not. The problem isn't Pookie and Ray Ray. The problem is any mindset that prevents you from wanting to actually push back against the system. And this leads me to something that Nylah and Sin, I heard them talking about. And I know you guys said you're going to have this conversation, but I can't help but bring it up. You know, I had, you guys were talking, you were saying, I don't think Black men like each other. I was talking to a brother and he told me he would not want Black men in power. He did not trust Black men to have power. He didn't want it. And I think I had to take 10 steps back when he said that, because I was so floored to hear a Black man say, I don't even want our men to have power. But because he doesn't think they would do anything responsible with it. That was beyond me. I didn't know what to do.
I literally got that epiphany. Ren and I were talking, and I mentioned this on Cynthia's earlier today. And listen, this stark reality hurt me. Okay, it pained my soul for it to even resonate this way. But if you think about it, the vast majority of them have not led anything, are not managing anything, are not trying to build anything, and are making excuses for not having, right? Instead of making a way. And a lot of them are resenting the women who have made some sort of way or life for them. They try to diminish that. So in that case, how could power be ceded to a group that has never led? Who hires a manager that has no experience? What happens when you give power to someone that lacks experience? It's nothing but chaos. I was just telling Sin earlier, if we could press the button, if Black men could press a button and power go to them, their instincts would not be to immediately oppress white males. Their instincts would be to oppress Black women. They view us as their oppressor. Black women, on the other hand, if power were to be ceded to them to make the decision, they would cede power to Black men and oppress white men. But you best believe the collective of Black men would oppress us first.
I would really hope that's not the case. But even when
because we can look at when the Moors were in power. When the Moors were in power, they had Black women being subjugated to white women. So we know what they would do, because we can look to history to see what they would do.
You know, I don't want to believe that. But even when we make the Pookie and Ray Ray argument or the educated lame argument, even then it's Black men putting down other Black men and having a low opinion of them and assigning that degeneracy and the most base of what humanity is to their own people. When you have such a low opinion of your own and such a high opinion of accessing the position of whiteness, that is scary to me. It's scary to me with what ease we're able to come for our own, right? The men are able to come for each other within the community, but can't see the flaws and issues outside the community and want to come with equal energy for that. And what I don't understand is the pushback from Black men on these conversations. I mean, if I'm not a man, but I am a mother. If my children were coming to me and they were asking me, Mom, I really want you to be able to provide, you know, a home for me, to lead me, to build something better for me, to ensure that we're safe. I want you to be able to, you know, compete, you know, when, you know, you go to the stores and make sure that you bring back the things that we need. I'm not going to turn and have anger toward them unless I feel that these are things I'm not capable of. And hearing them ask me for something I cannot provide frustrates me. So then I turn my anger at not being able to provide those things on the people asking, right? I don't understand from a man's perspective how Black women can come and say, We want to put our foot down here because we think you can do more. You can be greater. We want to encourage a non-defeatist, non-servant-minded attitude in you, non-sex-oriented attitude in you, worshiping and groveling attitude in you, but a leadership attitude, an attitude to build, and a desire to compete. We want to help restore your manhood as a collective. Not saying Black men don't move like this. You guys know I have a whole series for it. But what is the flaw in wanting to see your manhood restored as a collective? And manhood requires being able to compete for resources and power with other men. Not to be able to go to them and ask them for things, not to be able to go get hired at their companies, not to be able to live in their neighborhoods, but to be the person that provides the resources, that provides the jobs, that provides, right, those things. What is the crime? I just don't understand what the crime is. I'm confused by that. Why is that such a negative thing?
When women are encouraging that mindset in men, what it does is it separates the men from boys in a lot of ways. You have to look at it. It's no different than when we have the conversation about liberation and stuff like that. You and I, compared to the average Black man in these conversations, are more willing to do more physical than they are willing to take more risk, have an understanding of how pragmatic you have to be when you are. We know that liberation requires death. Liberation requires sacrifice. It's not pretty, it's bloody, it's nonviolent. The first thing that these men talk about is how they're outnumbered and how the system is so big. We have an understanding that they don't have. You understand what I'm saying? And just them having the mindset of being small or being weaker or being dominated and just not wanting to even take the risk. You have to take the risk. A lot of people, like, if we revisit the conversation where Kanye said slavery was a choice, how off was it? How off what? Even though,
well, when you listen to how he explained it, when I went and listened to it over, and I heard what he said after that, it made sense, because he said it's all of y'all and a small amount of them. So he was talking about how the slaves outnumbered even the people on the plantation, but they were still complicit in it. And then it does make sense. I mean, he's a little raccoon, but what can you do?
they outnumbered, and just the mere fact that the men involved, or the men in question, when we're talking to a lot of them, they don't want to get dirty. They don't want to fight. They don't want to, like, you may, like, rebelling against the system means that you're going to probably have a criminal record, because really rebellion it's a crime to rebel.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going over with my students the Dred Scott decision. And Dred Scott took, for those of you who don't know, this was what determined that slaves didn't have the right to push back against their masters in a legal way. I want to say this. What blew my mind is that he took the man to court. He didn't smash the man's head in. He didn't beat him up. He didn't permanently make him incapable of not harming his wife and children. He took him to a court of law and attempted to get other white people to agree that it was wrong that his wife, his children, and himself were being harmed. And perhaps the biggest thing, my biggest takeaway from having read the decision from the court and the court transcripts, is that what Nylah was basically saying, which is there is a choice and a fear to handle anything in the way that we are handled as a collective, right? The power that's been gotten, because somebody said, so are those other groups men because of their history? Well, men are men, whether they're weak or strong, right? They're still men. But the real question is, are they successful? Yes. They were successful with their violence. They were successful with their conquest. They were successful in their domination. And we are always looking for a way to avoid conflict, or like Nylah said, taking risks out of fear of losing. And like I said, the operation from a weak place, a place of weakness, a place of lack of power, a place of smallness, a place of being given things versus taking them, a place of, go ahead.
I said cowardice, my bad.
Yes, cowardice. No, you're fine. Go ahead. Yeah, it's being a coward. Yeah.
But why are they basing what they do on what other men are doing? And see, that's what I feel like is the problem, because they'll make arguments to be weak. They'll make arguments to support their desire to do nothing, but then we'll turn around and complain that Black women are not cooperating with them and won't submit to them. Well, and we shouldn't. First of all, Black women are submitting to you, but Black women shouldn't submit to a male group who will admit publicly that, number one, a concept like feminism can completely strip away their manhood. So first of all, your manhood is shaky. It's barely there. And the little bit of manhood that you have is shaky to the degree that anything can compromise your manhood. But you also don't even know how to get yourself out of a situation that you claim that you don't want to be in. So how would it make sense for any women to submit to a male group that don't even know how they're going to do something to protect themselves? You can't do it for you. You can't get you out of subjugation. You can't make society safer for you. So why would she submit to you knowing that? Like, it just doesn't even make any sense. They're ego driven. They want the submission for the aesthetics, not because they feel like it's in the best interest of Black women, and that if Black women submit to them, they'll have a more comfortable, less problematic life. They're not trying to relieve Black women of a burden. They're trying to satisfy their ego. And that's the problem.
I agree with you, Renita. White men were the first Pookie. That is how they gained dominance over Black men. I agree.
And they celebrate it. Like, that's the thing. Like, the thing that they use to shame us is how they maintain their dominance. When you think about white male Pookieism, if you will, you think of people like Billy the Kid, Al Capone, all of these key figures, these bank robbers, murderers, whatever you want to call it. These people are legends in their culture. Their Pookies are celebrated. They build museums. They do festivals surrounding them. Our Pookies are what? The stain of the community. The understanding and the psychology has got to change. They've taught us to chastise all of our natural inclinations. Anything that could help us, they've taught us to hate it. You hate the Pookie because you don't understand how to utilize the Pookie, right? Because they've taught you to fear him, and they've taught you to chastise them in their absence, because they're not chastising their Pookies the same way. They are celebrating them. They sell all types of memorabilia about their Pookies. This is how they maintain that mental dominance and that show of dominance over all of Black men. They celebrate theirs.
Because Pookie is that goon squad. And right. The thing is, the educated lanes know that in order to maintain what they have, they gotta have Pookie on the payroll. They have to. They can't separate themselves from Pookie. They can't ostracize Pookie. Because Pookie is running around with those badges on, turning y'all into hashtags. That's what Pookie is doing. While the elites sit up, perched up in their luxury and watch it all happen.
Wow. Honestly, what you guys just brought to light is so deep. When Nylah said that there is a hatred for Pookie because you don't know how to utilize Pookie. And if you coupleize that with what Cyn said, which is that the elite have their educated lanes, right? Those in power have their educated lanes, but they aren't chastising their Pookies. they're keeping them on deck to do the dirty work. In our community, though, we don't see that division. We don't see that everybody has a purpose. We are taught to do the work of their society for them, which is to bring down the very people who have the backbone to do the dirty work. We don't know how to utilize them. We don't recognize them as tools for our liberation. And I go ahead.
They turn them into their enemies. This is why there's a concerted effort to make this whole separation, because this is what, and I've been saying this since I've gotten on here, I rejected the notion of a Pookie and Ray Ray in an educated lane for the reason that there is no such thing. There is your house Negro and there's your field Negro. That's it. And it has nothing to do with economics. It's all mindset. These men are basically snuffing them out in a way and usurping any sort of, well, not usurping, but they're using respectability politics to somewhat disenfranchise them. And so they've made an enemy out of Pookie instead of just reaching for him. They've made it to where Pookie sees them as an enemy as well, because look how they treat them. Look at the separation. But when you think of older times, like when you think of and even like maybe the 60s and the 70s, and you read some of the literature and stuff like that, they understood that group of men, that level of group of men who were about it and would do it. Those group of men had an open respect for the quote unquote lame, right? Everybody understood their role. But because these men want to be dark-skinned white men, as someone said in the chat, they ostracize this person because they feel the need to look down. And that's all it's about. This is just so that Black men can have some sort of respectability politics, so that they can create some sort of social hierarchy within themselves. That really is only about measuring with the stick of the white man anyway. Why do you think they're going around calling themselves high value men now? That's just an upgrade of a house Negro. That's all it is.
I really feel like they're cock blocking at the end of the day, because that's why even with that Kenneth L. trash bag struggle bandit, talking about who Black women are choosing, all they're doing is cock blocking, basically saying, no, pick me, give me the sexual access so then I can turn around and pretend to be like Pookie. That's all they want to do, because they're not going to treat a woman right. They're not going to be faithful to her. They promote the same thing that they're saying that Pookie is doing. They just want to be able to do it. That's the thing.
I have to put my bread on because, you know, I show you how it rose. I punched it down and it's rising over the bowl again. But let me ask, and if one of you guys want, I want to have this conversation.
No, I can't. Nylah, that's your cue, because I can't, or else it's going to be real short if I carry it. Like, because I can't.
What do we need?
Do you want to take it over to your channel, the conversation?
Oh no, I am so tired.
Okay, look, y'all, I have bread to bake because I'm
It sounds like we all about to lay up and we just go do part 2 on a later day.
Yeah, let's just do part 2 on a later on a later day. But
Irene already know I told you I got a lot of laying up to do in a little bit of time. And so I gotta get to this laying up.
I want to go on a picnic tomorrow, and you know I have my bread rising and it's over the bowl again. I punched it down and we've been talking for like 2 hours and now it's going over the bowl again. So I've got to put it in the oven or I'm going to have a beer.
I did not know you guys were live this long.
No, we weren't.
We weren't. Oh, you know what? Long. Maybe I've just had my meeting running that long.
Yeah.
How long have you been live?
Yeah, we weren't live for that long. We went live at probably for like 45 minutes.
Yeah, we've only been live for an hour.
Yeah.
Okay.
Close to that, but
I'm my timer on here, and I think I just started the meeting like way before we actually started.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's pick up the conversation again. I think where we ended, the utilization, like not fearing or despising Pookie and Ray Ray, but understanding that there's a place for that type of man. And it's a place that it would be stupid of us to ignore. and recognizing the utilitarian nature of that, and just who do you think the armies are made of? Do you know the special ops are made of?
But why do we have to say that to a group of men that's always talking about somebody playing chess and not checkers?
They don't know what they're talking about. They have no idea. They're just running their freaking mouths. They don't know what they're talking about. They're literally talking about chess. They're not talking about actual movements on Earth among mankind. They're talking about a board game when they say that.
Girl, so, they're talking about bingo. They're not even talking about chess.
I can't do it. I cannot.
See, I was thinking more like Connect Four. They ain't even like nowhere near it. Like they don't even know what the concept is, because it's a simple concept to merge with your pookies and use them for what they're good at. They're the muscle. Mm-hmm. That's what the pookies are. The educated lames, they ain't trying to put no work in. They don't want to get their hands dirty. So that's when you dial up Pookie.
Exactly. And then even having an understanding that Pookie himself, even there's an expiration on when he can actually be, effective in doing that. So somebody has to be training the next level. Like it has to be a constant flow of understanding of where you're at within the society. Like how long, just even think of the quote on Pookie in the street. Okay, we'll go ahead, because people like to call Taz, a Pookie or whatever. Yeah, he was in his 20s. But now as a middle-aged man, he's at home in the garage clinking around like most men are. So it's a little bit, it's people have to have an understanding of what we're looking at, because everybody else, if you look at the army, these are not the smart white men. They're just not.
Yeah. They're not operating from the brightest of places.
Mm-mm. And then they have the next level. They have the Navy. These are guys that have a little bit more, technical sense, a little bit more like it, just like you have to utilize every single group of these men, and they just want to separate and put themselves above who they deem unnecessary. And
but they don't think like leaders too, because that I think that exposes the lack of leadership in them, their complete and total inability to actually lead and be strategic in a way that competes with actual other male groups. They think very small, and I think that's why they don't make those connections, and it's frustrating to watch. And so when you see women that are frustrated at that, that's why. When you don't get that respect, despite you feeling I got the degree, I got the job, I got the house, that's why. Because we're thinking in a much bigger way. Maybe some of these women are above your mental status. Mm-hmm. And you don't comprehend where we're coming from, because it's beyond your thinking and your comprehension, right? And then, of course, kudos to the men that do understand, but that's not the majority of our men. And I think we have to be honest about that, or we're never going to be able to change anything. But anyway, we will have to have a part 2, because I just think this conversation is so interesting, and I think it's been so productive. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of times we get caught up, especially when it comes to sin, and Nylah has a lot of bite too. We can get caught up in the way the words are making us feel because of how people are saying them, and lose the logic and the intellect behind them. So anyway.
Yeah, they need to get over it, and YouTube need to fix their analytics, because it's janky right now.
Oh yeah, the analytics are awful right now.
All right.
I'm telling you, it's the retrograde.
It is. It absolutely is.
I'm gonna talk to y'all later. I'm gonna get my bread in the oven. And
all right, I can smell your fresh baked bread from here. I love the smell of bread that's fresh baking. I love it. It smells so good.
Yeah, I'm ready to get to it. I cannot wait for our picnic tomorrow. But thank you, ladies, so much for coming up.
Thanks for
all right, thank you.
Conversation. Bye, chat. Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.